Welcome, I'm Bev Adams. I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And I'd like to show you this Starburst layout. And I'm going to embellish it a little bit with some vellum snowflakes. So let's get started. I'm cutting out my elements from the snowflake card Thinlits die. I'm using the two snowflakes and Joy. And I'm cutting the snowflakes out of vellum, which is thinner and tougher than our regular cardstock. And so I'm using some just scrap cardstock underneath the vellum. And I also want to release them easily, so I'm putting some wax paper between. I'm putting my two snowflakes down, the cutting side facing the cardstock. And then I want to cut Joy out of white, Whisper White cardstock. But I also want to release that, so I've got that. Now Joy is a little tiny one, and sometimes it wants to hop around between those dots. So there we go. I'll run this through the Big Shot. And perhaps the hardest thing now is to separate the vellum and the wax paper and to find out what you've got. So in this case, I think I may have gotten lucky and the vellum and the wax paper separated out. So I have my vellum snowflakes. So I have my vellum snowflakes and my Joy. Now in this case, the Joy did stick inside, and so it's really pretty easy to use your piercing tool, or you could use a toothpick or something else small to poke through those holes, and then they separate out. If you have the wax paper stick, if you just kind of scratch the wax paper gently to separate that out, you can have your Joy. The Designer Series paper I'm using is the Trim the Tree Designer Series paper stack. I keep mine in a clear case, which is perfect. It fits just wonderfully. And then if you end up with scraps left over, you have a place to store them right inside there. I'm using rectangles that are 1.5 by 4.5, and I really could cut two of these at the same time. I'm going to cut them then diagonally, so just line up your points in the track. These are really longer than they need to be, and if your corners are not perfectly lined up, not to worry. So you're going to have your two stacks of triangles which look almost the same. You're going to turn one of them around and then flip them over so that your right angles are together, and that will solve some of the problems with getting to the corners. I'm using a piece of cherry cobbler design cardstock, but honestly this can be anything. This could be copy paper. This is 4 3/4 by 2.5. And I've marked the center of this cardstock the long way. I'm going to cover this entire piece of base cardstock. I'm going to line up with that center, those center marks, one of the pieces, and then match from the other stack on this side. I want to butt these edges together. And I don't need to have the point right at the edge of the cardstock, but near it. Now I did try and separate out the colors, so I don't want to have similar colors right next to each other. And depending on how close, you may have a little bit of a little edge left over. Don't worry about that. From my other stack, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Butting up. I think I don't want my stripes right next to each other, so I'm going to switch these around. There we go. I'm going to flip this over and just using my snips trim this. Now, as I said, you didn't need 4.5, so we've got lots of scraps left over. I suppose you could make some sort of patchwork card or something with these. And you could cut this on the trimmer if you wanted. Now this allows me to have some scraps. Let's see, what do I want to use? Let's use this one right here and this one here. I'm going to be covering most of that up with baker's twine, so I probably don't need to worry about it. But there we go. I've got my Starburst, and I think that this is just a beautiful effect, and it looks so much harder than it is. I have this piece and another piece of cherry cobbler. I'm just going to layer that onto my early espresso. Again, I'm butting these edges up against each other. And I'm using cherry cobbler to wrap around. I'm wrapping around 3 times. Right at that seam. I'm going to tie a bow. So I'm going to use my handy alligator clips as another pair of hands. I'm going to wrap this around my layers, tie a little bow. Of course, tying a bow on camera is always hazardous, but baker's twine is really pretty forgiving, so it's usually pretty okay. Now all I have to do is add my elements that I cut out. I am using glue dots on the vellum. I'm just using one single glue dot in the center, and putting that right over the baker's twine. Another glue dot right over that. One of the things about vellum is that the adhesives show through. Just about every adhesive shows through, even the ones that are made for vellum, it seems. And so if you hide it with other elements, I think that's really the best choice. Then I'm going to just put one pearl in the center, and I have Joy. And I found for these little tiny pieces, the multi-purpose glue is a really good choice. Now I'm just going to put this on my card base with dimensionals. One for each corner and one for the middle. So pretty. I don't know if you know, but the snowflake card thinlits coordinate perfectly with the letterpress Winter, and so I'm going to use the letterpress Winter large snowflake. I'm going to stamp this in Whisper White on the inside of the card. And I'm going to give that a little chance to dry. Okay, then I'm going to stamp my greeting right in the middle of the snowflake. So I've stamped Season Greetings on the inside, and I hope you enjoy that card. If you would like to order the vellum, the Cherry Cobbler cardstock, or the Trim the Tree Designer Series paper for this card, come on over to bevadams.com, click the link Shop Now, and that will take you to the Stampin' Up! Store, where you will find all these products. Also on bevadams.com you'll find the supply list and the step-by-step directions. And you can also find the Trim the Tree Designer Series paper stack insert if you would like to keep your paper stack in a clear case like I do. Thank you for stopping by. I really appreciate your interest. Please leave messages and comments, and it was nice talking to you. Talk to you soon. Bye.